Everyone says unalive your darlings, but nobody talks about how this advice can actually strip away everything unique about your writing. So if you're cutting every sentence that you're proud of, keep watching. Look, I get it. Destroy your darlings is practically sacred in the writing world. It's the advice that gets repeated in workshops, plastered across writing blogs, and quoted by almost every successful author who's ever done an interview. And yeah, it's important, but it's also incomplete. And if you're following it blindly by cutting every beautiful phrase, every lyrical passage, and distinct turn of phrase, you might actually be destroying the very thing that makes your writing yours. So in this video, we're going to break down what unalive your darlings actually means, how it's commonly misinterpreted, and most importantly, the three main ways this advice can sabotage your voice as a writer. And I'll be referring to it as unalive or end or destroy your darlings throughout this video instead of the actual term so that I don't get flagged by YouTube. But once you understand when to end your darlings and when to actually let them live, your writing will develop a voice that's both polished and distinctly yours. If you're new here, my name is Brianna and I post writing videos that help you become a better writer. I also make easy to use writing workbooks that help you build and outline your novel from start to finish, so if you're interested, check them out in my Etsy shop, Planner Palette Co, linked in the description below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Now before we start this video, yes, I do want to address the monstrosity on my face. It's actually a lot better now, and I don't know if it's going to appear on camera the way it does in real life. But yeah, if you see this, I picked a pimple, and because I'm pregnant, my body decided to take this as a personal affront, and now this is the result. I've named him Giuseppe. He's gonna be hanging out with us throughout this video. So let's start with the basics. What does end your darlings actually mean, and where did it even come from? The phrase is often attributed to William Faulkner, who supposedly said, in writing, you must unalive all your darlings. But the earliest known version comes from British writer Arthur Quiller-Couch, who said, whenever you feel an impulse to perpetrate a piece of exceptionally fine writing, obey it wholeheartedly and delete it before sending your manuscript to press. Unalive your darlings. Now there's something important to note here. He isn't saying to never write beautiful prose. He actually says to obey the impulse wholeheartedly. Write it, get it out, but then delete it before you send it out. The advice was later popularized by Stephen King, who wrote, end your darlings, even when it breaks your egocentric little scribbler's heart, end your darlings. So what does this actually mean? The traditional interpretation is that when you're editing, you need to cut the passages that you're most attached to. The ones you think are particularly clever, beautiful, or impressive, if they don't serve your story. Your darlings are the sentences you wrote that made you sit back and think, damn, that's good. The ones you can't wait to read aloud at your book club, the phrases that you secretly are hoping will be quoted on Goodreads one day. The idea is that these passages are more to showcase your writing ability than to actually move the story forward. They're self-indulgent and showing off. They're essentially you, as the author, waving at the reader saying, look at me, look at how clever I am. And when writing does that, it breaks immersion. It reminds the readers that they're reading a constructed story than experiencing it. And I get it. That makes sense. Self-indulgent writing that serves the writer's ego rather than the story should be cut. Purple prose that exists purely for decoration and not the story should be edited out. Characters who show up because you love them but serve no narrative purpose, they probably gotta go. That's why this advice is not inherently bad advice. When understood correctly, End Your Darlings is a catchy guideline to remind readers to be ruthless when tightening up their prose. But for some reason, a lot of writers don't seem to be interpreting it the way that they should be. They hear End Your Darlings and immediately assume that anything they're proud of, anything that sounds beautiful or feels distinctive, must be self-indulgent and therefore needs to be cut. They start policing themselves preemptively, never allowing themselves to write something that sounds too good because they've internalized that darlings are bad. And that's where we run into the three major problems with this advice. The first issue with ending your darlings is that it can make you afraid of writing anything that sounds like you. You become so afraid of being self-indulgent that you sand down every rough edge, every interesting turn of phrase, or distinctive rhythm until your prose sounds like it could have been written by anybody. Let's say you write a sentence that you really love. Maybe it's a description that captures something in a way that you've never quite seen before, or it's a character's internal thought that feels razor sharp and true. Or maybe the rhythm of it just sounds good in your head. Then that voice kicks in. This must be a darling. That means it must be too much. you gotta cut it. So you cut it. You replace it with something that sounds more like what you think professional writing should sound like, which winds up being something generic that sounds like it could have been written by anyone. And you tell yourself you're being disciplined and professional. You're editing out your darlings like a real writer should, but you're actually editing out your voice. Your darlings, and in this case I mean your real ones, the darlings that actually matter and add flavor to your narrative, they aren't just pretty sentences. They're the fingerprints you leave on the page. They're the unique way you see the world, the specific metaphors that occur to you, the rhythm your sentences naturally fall into when you're not overthinking it. Patrick Rothfuss writes these long, lyrical passages in The Name of the Wind. Some people call them self-indulgent, but those passages are what makes his prose unmistakably his. Leigh Bardugo has a specific cadence to her sentences and a way of stacking images that's distinctive. Madeline Miller writes with this classical, almost mythological tone that wouldn't work for everybody, but is perfect for her retellings. These authors didn't strip away everything distinctive about their prose in the name of ending darlings. Instead, they kept what made their writing theirs and cut what genuinely didn't serve the story and weakened it. The problem is that reading and writing is such a personal and subjective thing. When you're starting out, or even if you've already been writing for years, it's really hard to tell the difference between this is self-indulgent and this is just my voice. So you err on the side of cutting everything that sounds remotely good, and you end up with prose that's technically competent but completely forgettable. You want your prose to have personality or a narrative style that serves as a vehicle for how the character is or how they experience the world. As long as it's doing the work by serving character, tone, or emotion, you don't need to cut it. If it's just beautiful prose for the sake of being beautiful prose, then it's most likely a darling that you can cut out. Readers don't fall in love with technically competent prose. They fall in love with distinctive prose that has a voice you can hear in writing that feels like it could only come from one person. You. The second major problem with ending your darlings is that it trains you to see all lyrical or beautiful prose as inherently suspect and something that probably doesn't belong. You start viewing it as decoration rather than structure. But that's not true because beautiful prose can absolutely serve the story when it's used intentionally. What I'm saying is that writers who hear this advice to end your darlings assume that beautiful writing and functional writing are opposites. They assume that if prose is lovely to read, it must not be doing real narrative work because you have to choose between style and substance. But that's a false dichotomy and another misinterpretation of this advice. The best writing does both, when it's beautiful and it serves a story. It underscores the themes, deepens characters, creates atmosphere, and controls pacing, all while sounding good. Toni Morrison's prose is gorgeous, lyrical, and sometimes challenging, but it's never just decoration. Every sentence is doing work by either building character, exploring themes, or creating emotional resonance. Laini Taylor's writing in the Strange the Dreamer series is lush and fantastical, but it's not self-indulgent. Instead, it reflects the dreamlike quality of the story's world. So the prose here then serves a world-building function. The problem is that if you've been told to end your darlings without understanding the nuance, you start to see any prose that sounds particularly good as a red flag. You assume it must be self-indulgent, so you cut it. And sometimes you're right, sometimes it is self-indulgent, but sometimes you're cutting prose that's actually personalizing your story. So how do you tell the difference? How do you know when beautiful prose is serving the story versus when it's just showing off? A simple test is to just ask yourself what the sentence is doing. Is it revealing character through the specific way they perceive something? Is it building atmosphere or tone? Is it reinforcing a theme? Is it controlling pacing in a deliberate way? Or does it create an emotional response that's important for this moment in the story? If the answer to any of these is yes, then the prose is functional, not self-indulgent. It's doing its job. The fact that it also sounds good is a bonus, not a problem. Learning to recognize when prose is self-indulgent versus when it's genuinely serving the story is one of the most important skills you can develop as a writer. So when you end your darlings without considering the nuance of it, it can actually prevent you from developing that skill. The third issue with the end your darlings advice is that it encourages a culture of shame around writing you're proud of. It can create this underlying implication that if you're proud of something you wrote, that pride itself is suspect. Writers start believing that being pleased with your own work is a sign of ego, not craft, and that the proper writerly stance is to never be pleased with your work. I've seen this all the time in writing forums. Someone shares an excerpt that they're excited about, and the first response is often some variation of, "That's a darling, you should probably cut it." Or a writer admits that they really love a particular chapter, and other writers immediately warn them, "If you love it that much, it probably needs to go." The underlying message becomes your attachment to and pride in your work is a red flag. If you think something you wrote is good, you're probably wrong and you're definitely being self-indulgent. And I get where this comes from. Writers need to be able to look at their work objectively. We do need to be willing to cut out things that don't work, even if we personally love them, because attachment can absolutely blind us to problems. But there's a huge difference between don't let attachment keep you from making unnecessary cuts and be suspicious of anything you're proud of. The first is healthy detachment, the second is toxic shame. Because when you internalize that shame, you stop trusting your own instincts as a writer and you second guess yourself about everything. You write a sentence that feels right, that sounds good, that does what you want it to do, and instead of celebrating that, you immediately start looking for reasons to cut it. Not because it doesn't work, but because you've internalized that liking it means it's bad. You end up in this weird paradox where you're simultaneously trying to write well while also trying not to write too well. You're shooting for some mythical middle ground of good but not so good that it looks like you tried, or worse, that it's so good it's probably AI. That's exhausting and counterproductive. Because you know what separates published authors from unpublished ones? Published authors wrote things they're proud of and kept them. They developed the confidence to say, yes, this sentence is exactly what I want it to be, without immediately assuming that pride means it's garbage. Arthur Quiller-Couch even said to write a first, to obey the impulse wholeheartedly. The destroying comes later, during revision, and only for things that don't genuinely serve your story. But we've somehow twisted that into never write anything you're proud of in the first place. We've made it a preemptive shame rather than a thoughtful editorial decision. You're allowed to be proud of your writing and think that a sentence you wrote is brilliant. Being proud of your work doesn't automatically make it self-indulgent. Sometimes it means you just did a good job. So the question shouldn't be, am I proud of this? It should be, does this serve the story? If it does, keep it. Even if, especially if, you're proud of it. Because the best writing comes from the intersection of craft and confidence. From knowing what you're trying to do and being willing to fully commit to it. So if End Your Darlings isn't the complete picture, what's the better rule? I think you should end your darlings when they serve you more than they serve the story, but let them live when they do both. That's because it doesn't matter whether the prose is beautiful. What matters is whether it's functional, doing narrative work, and whether removing it would actually weaken the story, not make it safer. So here are some situations where you probably should end your darlings. When you're describing something at length that doesn't matter to the plot, character, or theme. So if you spend 3 paragraphs describing a sunset and none of that description reveals character perspective, establishes setting that matters, or reinforces theme, it's probably self-indulgent. Cut it or condense it to what actually serves the story. When you're showing off knowledge or vocabulary that isn't appropriate for the point of view character or the tone of the scene. If your working class mechanic character is suddenly thinking in flowery, philosophical language that doesn't match how they talk or think, that's you as the author showing up. If your tense action scene suddenly pauses for a lyrical meditation, that's probably breaking the mood. These are darlings worth destroying because they're pulling the readers out of the story. The only reason you would keep those is if you're doing it intentionally for a reason that serves the story. When the prose draws more attention to itself than to what it's describing. So if your readers are stopping to think, wow, that's a pretty sentence, instead of being immersed in the scene, something might be wrong. The goal of good prose is to disappear into the background so that the scene itself stays at the forefront. Good prose should highlight the experience without calling attention to itself as writing. And when you've got the same stylistic flourish repeated so often, it becomes annoying. This type of darling has diminishing returns. Maybe metaphors are your thing and you're great at them, but if every few sentences is a metaphor, they stop being special and start sounding like noise. This means you've overused your darling and it needs to be scaled back. Now here's when you should keep your darlings, when the prose reflects character voice in a distinctive, consistent way. If your character sees the world in a specific way and your prose captures that, keep it. That's not self-indulgent. That's good characterization through prose. When the style serves genre expectations or the mood you're trying to create. Gothic horror should sound different than cozy mystery. Epic fantasy often calls for more elevated prose than contemporary romance. If your prose choices are deliberate and genre appropriate, they're not darlings, they're just tools of the trade. When removing the passage would make the story less emotionally resonant. Sometimes a beautiful sentence hits the exact emotional note you need to make readers feel something. That's not decoration then. That's the entire point of fiction. And 4, when it's genuinely part of your voice and cutting it makes everything sound generic. If you cut all your stylistic choices and you're left with prose that sounds like it genuinely could have been written by anyone else, you've gone too far. Voice and distinctiveness matters in storytelling. Don't cut out darlings that are just your personality showing up on the page. So how do you learn to tell the difference? How do you know what to cut and what to keep? First, write freely in your craft. Don't police yourself and end your darlings prematurely. Do what Arthur Quiller-Couch says and let yourself write the beautiful lyrical passages in your distinctive voice. That's the whole point of a first draft, to make your story exist in its raw creative form from your mind. You can always cut it back later, but you can't revive sentences that you never allowed yourself to write in the first place. Then, in the revision stages, ask yourself functional questions. Not is this beautiful, but what is this doing? If you can see how a passage serves character, plot, theme, or atmosphere, it probably belongs. If your only answer is, I just think it sounds good, then that's probably a yellow flag worth examining. Third, get beta readers who understand your genre and goals. Ask them specifically, are there places where the prose pulled you out of the story, where it felt like it was showing off, where it felt more like me than like the character? Fourth, study authors whose prose you admire. Pay attention to how they use beautiful language. Look at what it's accomplishing, and take advantage of their works to learn how their writing is both distinctive and functional. And lastly, just trust yourself more. If you've done the work, if you've asked the hard questions, if you've gotten feedback and thought critically about your choices, trust that you can tell the difference between self-indulgence and style. You don't need to preemptively destroy everything you're proud of just to be safe. End your darlings isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. The complete version is to end your darlings when they're not pulling their weight and keep your darlings when they're doing their job. In that sense, it's not self-indulgence, it's just craft. And you shouldn't cut out your voice just because someone told you that all darlings must be unalived. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you might want to watch this one next. And let me know in the comments, have you ever cut something from your writing that you now regret? Or have you kept something that everybody told you to get rid of? Until the next chapter.